Andy Biggs, representing Arizona's 5th Congressional District, chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. Representative Biggs, Chairman Biggs, you're also a member of the House Judiciary Committee, and I'm told that the Senate is going to be trying to remove from office tomorrow someone who was removed from office. Can you tell me how this works? A, B, how are you, in reverse order?
I'm doing great, Seth. Thanks. Good to be with you as always. Well, I mean, that's the rub, isn't it? They're going to try to not just remove them. What they want to do, the real objective is to obliterate the Trump legacy, the popular policies, the successful policies, anything related to Trump they'd like to get rid of. So just understand this. There's 3 areas that Trump's team is going to win on during this impeachment trial, the facts themselves. So there's 2 reasons why. This was what we're finding out from the FBI. It's coming out in drips and drabs because that's what they do. They're going to allow President Trump to bleed quite a bit. But we're finding out that this was coordinated by some groups and was known days before this event happened. So what that does, that makes you can't incite a riot when people already have a conspiracy to create mayhem. So and the other aspect to it, Seth, is he's literally speaking when people are already breaching. So he's not inciting those people in there, and he's telling what his language is to go over there peacefully and patriotically. Mm-hmm. So he's going to win the facts, the process, and the Constitution. That's what he should win on.
Is it, Andy? It's weird, Your and my memory runs a little longer than most in the media, so I remember a little over a year ago, and there was a ton of sturm and drang and excitement and interest in that impeachment over Donald Trump. This one does seem to be a little bit less, it seems to be garnering a little less interest. Now, maybe that'll all change tomorrow because we have short attention spans and the media does and all that. But it does seem that most people seem to think this is all a bit much. But, you're in Washington, and the Democrats, what are they doing? Are they licking their lips? Do they really think they have something here?
Well, it's really tough to say right now because most Democrats don't want to even talk to any Republican at all anymore. I mean, I had a good conversation with 1 or 2 of my Democrat friends last week, and when I say that, I'm not being sarcastic. I mean, we really did have a nice conversation about things that we had been working on before all this erupted and everything, and that's good. But the reality is, I mean, we're getting bills that I had a lot of Democrat support before, where now Democrats are sending back messages saying, no, we're not going to sign on to his bill because he's a Republican, because we're not working with Republicans. So it's tough to say, but I have a feeling that there's a lot of them that know that this is not a good thing.
Does it show a certain weakness of Joe Biden's, in a sense, Andy? He's the only one who hasn't weighed in on this, as far as I can tell. The only one in public life who hasn't weighed in on the impeachment, 1. 2, you'll remember when John McCain passed, Joe Biden flew out here and gave a speech at one of his Phoenix funerals, and it was all about bipartisanship and how they were the last 2 who really liked working with the other side and that sort of thing. And boy, you're just describing a different atmosphere than the one Joe Biden painted.
Well, yeah, and the fact is, he is the leader of the Democrat Party, whether he wants to be or not, and his calls for unity certainly ring hollow because he hasn't condemned this bogus impeachment, which is unconstitutional. I just don't see how you can say it's constitutional. But he's really basically failed to lead. It's a failure of leadership, and he's signing executive order after executive order. That's a failure of leadership. It's a failure of leadership of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, a failure of leadership on the part of Joe Biden. Instead of saying, let's get this through Congress, let's have some hearings. Never forget that this impeachment round is the only one in the history of this country where you didn't have any referral to committees. You had no referral back to the body saying we need to have an impeachment investigation. Nothing. None of the normal process, which was barely there a year ago. Nothing there this time. Gates calls it a impeachment by reflex. I call it a microwave impeachment because there's no time to slow bake this thing. They've got to get it in and out. It's a frozen meal that they're trying to thaw out in the microwave. That's That's where this is.
Andy, do I understand this right, that Vermont Senator Pat Leahy is going to preside over the Senate trial? He will be acting as effectively the judge, but he also gets to vote on the merits of whether to convict or not?
Yeah, I mean, I've also likened it to a Soviet show trial.
Yeah.
It really is. You got a guy who's supposed to be, well, first of all, the judge who's supposed to show up on this has basically said, I'm not coming. Whatever reason. I suspect it's because he looks at it and he says, it's a disaster over there.
You're talking about John Roberts, right?
Yeah, Chief Justice Roberts, constitutionally.
Yeah, he doesn't want anything to do with this.
Right, and so he's staying away. So they point, I don't know, let's get one of the biggest anti-Trump senators there we possibly can, put him on, and to be the judge and the juror. So he's going to rule on admissibility of evidence, procedure, all of these things. And then he's going to say, you know what, I'm going to vote to impeach or convict.
Yeah.
The reality is that is, you just don't see that in American jurisprudence. You're just not going to ever see that.
And, of course, people ought to know that when the Supreme Court chief does preside over impeachment trials, he does not have a vote on the conviction or the acquittal. He doesn't get a vote.
He's like a regular
as
judge
in any other
in a regular
courtroom in America.
trial.
Right. He is not on the jury. Andy, how much of a sense? I got to tell you, I see it out here, and you probably see it here when you're back in district. But now that you're, as we say in D.C. or in country, how much do you see of this effort to paint every Republican, or at least everyone who had a good thought about Donald Trump here and there, as part and parcel of a domestic violence extremist organization or movement?
Well, I think I see it every day, multiple times a day. I talked to one of our senior leaders last week, right before I left to come home. We were talking about this effort to basically silence Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, and then we started iterating who we thought was next in the line, because it doesn't end with her.
No.
And I was told they anticipate shortly a censure resolution to censure 140 Republicans, which is almost 2/3 of all Republicans, almost 3/4 of all of the Republicans in the House, for having the temerity to do what Democrats have wanted to do, which is object to the certification of certain state electors. That's been done by Democrats repeatedly, but now they want to censure Republicans for doing that, and that's where we are. That's where they are. They don't want to help us with bills. They don't want to have a discussion on bills. They changed the rules here to silence the minority rights. And I'm not saying that as sour grapes. What I'm saying is it is the consolidation of power that we've seen in other authoritarian nations, where the bodies that make the laws, in this case, we receive our authority from the people. It's delegated to us to go make the laws. In authoritarian regimes in the early part of the last century, that's what they did. They took and they co-opted that legislative branch and basically created a one-party system at the same time that they were consolidating power militarily, domestically with intelligence, as also with the press and the media. That's what we see happening.